On March 3, 2024, Georgia's governor made a bold promise that stunned the state. By April, $1.14 billion was legally diverted, triggering Contract GADOT 2024-001-23 and a $230 million payout. Without warning, the result? Billions gone. 15,800 homes lost. One silent space mission. How did the governor's housing gamble just cost Georgia billions? And why is no one talking about the document trail that started it all? At precisely 10 a.m. on March 3, 2024, Georgia's governor stepped to the podium, flanked by state flags and a row of silent advisors. The press conference, archived as GOV_announce_202403003.mp4, captured a moment that would ripple through every ledger in the state. The governor's remarks, delivered with measured confidence, unveiled a sweeping realignment of public funds. He spoke of a dual-purpose investment, one that, in his words, would stimulate Georgia's economy and launch the state into a new era of scientific ambition. Every dollar must pull double duty. Reporters pressed for specifics. The governor referenced both affordable housing and an unnamed advanced aerospace initiative, hinting at a future where Georgia's prosperity would be measured not only in homes built, but in the reach of its ambitions beyond the atmosphere. He framed the move as bold, necessary, and forward-looking, insisting that the state could solve its housing crisis, while also supporting what he called transformational infrastructure. No numbers appeared in the prepared remarks, no mention of the precise funding source or the legal mechanics behind the transfer. Instead, the governor's statement set the stage for a fiscal maneuver that, within weeks, would send shockwaves through budget committees, housing authorities, and the families waiting for help. On that morning, the only certainty was the governor's resolve and the silence that followed the last question. At 2:18 a.m. on April 15, 2024, the House Appropriations Subcommittee convened in a nearly empty chamber. Legislative clerks read aloud the language of Amendment 47, their voices echoing off marble. The amendment authorized the transfer of $1.14 billion from the Affordable Housing Trust to a new escrow account, earmarked for a project identified only as Camden 1. The precise figure was entered into the record without debate. The transcript shows a vote tally of 7-3, with 2 abstentions. No public comment was permitted. The following afternoon, the governor's office filed Executive Order 2024-04A. The order cited emergent infrastructure priorities and invoked statutory authority to redirect appropriated funds. The document, stamped and logged by the Secretary of State at 3:41 p.m. on April 16, 2024, referenced Amendment 47 by number and certified the transfer as immediately effective. Clerks in the Treasury Division prepared the payment schedule as instructed. The legal mechanism was now complete. A single amendment, backed by executive order, had rewritten the fate of more than $1 billion in public housing funds. The ledger reflected the change in real time. Within hours, the foundation for Georgia's largest housing reallocation in a decade was set in statute, awaiting only the Treasury's release. Contract GADOT 2024-001-23 appeared on the State Procurement Registry on June 1, 2024. The award, signed by the Department of Transportation's Chief Procurement Officer, named Spaceport Camden Authority as the contractor for Camden. 1. The contract file, stamped and logged, detailed a total project value of $1.23 billion, with milestone payments scheduled across the fiscal year. On July 9, 2024, the Treasury Division authorized warrant 2024-6890 for $230 million. The warrant ledger shows the transfer as a line item, referencing both the contract number and the executive order. Treasury staff recorded the warrant's release at 10:14 a.m. and the funds cleared to a designated escrow account at Bank of Georgia. The bank's receipt, file Bank of GA_202040515_escrow.pdf, confirms the deposit and account routing. Each step left a digital trail: contract award, warrant issue, and bank confirmation. Procurement officials initialed every document, linking the paper chain from legislative authority to executed payment. The ledger now reflected a new balance. Public housing dollars, once committed to affordable units, now held in escrow for a project whose details remained closely guarded. The fiscal transfer was complete. What had begun as a legislative amendment now existed as a series of transactions, each one verifiable, each one shifting the state's priorities from housing to aerospace. The ledger's new balance left a vacuum across Georgia's housing map. The numbers, though abstract in budget hearings, became painfully real on the ground. According to the Georgia Housing Coalition, $2.37 billion redirected from affordable housing could have financed about 15,800 new two-bedroom units, enough to make a visible dent in the state's chronic shortage. Instead, projects once counted on by city planners and local families began to vanish from development schedules. In Savannah, the Savannah Shores Senior Housing Project, planned for 86 units, entered indefinite delay after losing access to state low-income housing tax credits. Board minutes from December 2024 show developers warning that without restored funding, construction might never begin. In Atlanta, officials reviewed case files for Yamacraw Village, where 315 units once stood. Now only 98 remain habitable, and the fate of the rest depends on uncertain negotiations and the hope of new financing. The Section 8 rent assistance backlog swelled to nearly 2,800 households, as documented by the local housing authorities' September 2024 waiting list. Each number represents a household waiting for relief that may never come. Housing administrators cite memos and developer correspondence, tallying units lost not as a distant policy debate, but as a daily reality for thousands. The opportunity cost is no longer theoretical. It is measured in canceled leases, empty lots, and names on waiting lists that grow longer with every month the money stays gone. Camden 1 appeared in the official FAA file as Mission Number 2024-197731, scheduled for launch at 1400 UTC on September 12, 2024. The contract listed a 5,330 kilogram payload, with all documentation routed through the Spaceport Camden Authority and the Georgia Department of Transportation. Range safety logs confirmed the countdown began on time, with all pre-launch checks signed off by the mission scientist and the range safety officer. At 14 hours, 3 minutes, 12 seconds Z, the range safety officer recorded an unexpected propellant pressure fluctuation. 9 seconds later, at exactly 14 hours, 3 minutes, 21 seconds Z, the telemetry feed cut out. No further data appeared in the mission log for the next 12 seconds. The FAA official response to a Freedom of Information Act request, dated October 2, 2024, states, "No telemetry was available for UTC on September 12, 2024 at 14 hours, 3 minutes, 0 seconds, Z." The range safety officer's audio logged at 14 hours, 3 minutes, 19 seconds Z simply notes we have a gap. The mission scientist later described the blackout as rare, emphasizing that gaps of this kind are typically investigated for encrypted operations or hardware failure, but in this case the data was simply missing. Every dollar from the diverted housing funds was now riding on a mission whose outcome could not be independently verified. The official record, FAA file, Range Safety Log, and Freedom of Information Act response left 12 seconds unaccounted for. The question of what happened during the telemetry gap and whether Georgia would ever see a return on its investment remained unresolved. On October 2, 2024, attorneys for the Atlanta Housing Coalition filed Case 24-CV-7612 in Fulton County Superior Court. The complaint, stamped and entered into the docket, sought an immediate injunction against further disbursement of funds to the Camden 1 account. Within 48 hours, a judge issued a restraining order, freezing all outgoing payments for 18 days pending review of the state's fiscal procedures. The court's language was unambiguous. No additional transfers from housing allocations would proceed until the legality of the diversion had been examined. Days before the court filing, the Commissioner of the Department of Community Affairs submitted a resignation letter dated June 5, 2024. The letter cited irreconcilable differences over policy direction, referencing internal disagreements about the use of federal home funds and the sudden shift in housing strategy. The leadership change sent a ripple through agency ranks, leaving project managers and housing advocates scrambling for answers as correspondence between the Department of Community Affairs and the Governor's office became part of the official record. Meanwhile, the state auditor's annual report, released in August and flagged on page 27, documented unreconciled housing voucher payments exceeding $1.17 billion between July 2023 and March 2024. The audit raised concerns about compliance with statutory earmarks and the transparency of the reallocation process. Legislative hearings convened on October 10th and October 21st brought these findings into the public eye, with lawmakers pressing for clarity on how the funds were moved and who authorized the final transfers. Calls for open records and further investigation multiplied as the payment freeze remained in effect, and advocates demanded a full accounting of what was lost and what could still be recovered. Today, Georgia's housing gap deepens. Over 210,000 families still wait for affordable homes. As public trust erodes and billions vanish, every policy choice ripples for decades. The real gamble is not money. It is whether leaders remember who pays the price. For Georgia, that answer shapes tomorrow's reality.